All right, we are recording. Good evening, everybody. This is the Town of New Canaan Affordable Housing Committee Project Development Subcommittee special meeting for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. Let's go ahead and do the roll call. Krista Nielsen, I'm here. Hillary Ormond, I believe will be here shortly. Bill Perrette.
Here.
Michael Sweeney.
Here.
Jane Williams.
Here.
And Jeff Williams.
Here.
All right. One of the things I wanted to ask is if somebody could volunteer tonight to do the minutes of the meeting, starting to realize how much work this is all becoming for me. They don't have to be very detailed. I'm happy to help out, but if someone could just say that they'll take a rough draft at it, that would be really helpful to me.
I'll do that, Krista.
Thanks, Jane. All right, so we're getting started at 7:05. All right, so there are kind of two paths that I wanted to talk about tonight. One is process, and that was where I was going to start, and then the other is substance. Obviously, they go together. I don't think we can truly figure out what we're going to do at a public meeting or a survey without talking about substance, but I think we can start to map out the process we want to go through and then start to fill in some of the pieces with substance later on. I'm assuming everyone has had a chance to spend some time looking at and rethinking about the conversation we had on January 12th with Amenta Emma and the drawings they gave us. Yeah, it was a lot to digest. I think I'm still digesting. All right, so I think let's talk about logistics first, which on the email I sent you guys on January 18th as a follow-up was the fourth item. So public meeting, I think we need to, in our minds at least, if not put it out publicly, but at least now in our minds, set a target date for having a public meeting on our potential options here. I did a little thinking and sorting on this, and basically between the public school February break and spring break and the private schools 2-week March spring break, if we wanted to step by step all of that, and also what's going on for the budget adoption process for this year, we'd be looking at mid-April before we could have a public meeting, which I think gives us a good amount of time to get ready. That's the upside of a mid-April date. The downside is right now, Amenta Emma's contract is set to expire June 30th. I suspect there's probably an extension process. I don't know what it is. And then the other thing is, we talked a little bit about this last time, I think, but at some point there'll be some sort of settlement, I would assume, over we've been owned, and I really hate to see our process get caught up in that timing wise. I mean, it may be inevitable, there may be nothing we can do, but if we can try to keep them separate, I think that would be best for us, because I think there'll be a lot of turmoil. I don't know if turmoil is the right word. I think there'll be a lot of people coming out of the woodwork with a lot of questions at that point. And that's not that we don't want people with questions. You just want to focus the conversation on the work we're trying to do and not get caught in a different process that we're really not involved in. So like I said, week of April 13th, I didn't say that specifically, but the week of April 13th is the week immediately following public school break. So in my mind, at least, I'm thinking either that week or the following week to target for a public meeting, but what do you guys think about timing?
Can I, and I don't mean to slow things down at all.
Yeah.
Could we just, before we start to set the schedule, just make sure that we all understand what the objective of this meeting is? What do we want to accomplish in this meeting? And that does go back to what you said, which is being ready for it, depending on what we think it should be. We want ample time to get ready for it. So have you put in words for yourself how to think about the objectives of the meeting?
Yes, and so we're kind of gonna go back and forth between agenda items 2 and 3. 3 was more what I was gonna call the substance, and 2 was the process. What I think we are trying to accomplish in this public meeting is first, education of the process we've gone through, of the constraints that we're dealing with from a legal standpoint, and why we have to do a project of this nature now-ish. And then orientation to the drawings that Amenta Emma has given us, just make sure everyone's seeing the same things and understanding what they're looking at. Different people have different skill sets when it comes to set of hands. Sorry. Here. Hi. Hi, Bill again. I thought Bill was literally upstairs.
How you doing?
Showed up on the screen. I'm here. All right, so Hillary, just quickly, we haven't really gotten very far. We started to talk about scheduling a public meeting, and then we shifted over to what is the purpose of the public meeting. And so I was about to list 3 things. First was history, the second is orientation, site plans. And then the third thing that I'm thinking, and this is where I really wanted to have a conversation on substance later, is basically what I see is a series of trade-offs when I look at these site plans. I mean, this group here in this room knows we have to do something if we want a moratorium in 2032. So this is not an if, it's a what and when. And I don't see an option when I look at these that I'm like, wow, that one's just perfect. Checks every box, there's nothing wrong with it. This is the one. And I don't know that anybody would. I mean, I don't know that that exists in any world that we live in. So what I see is a series of trade-offs. And so what I would like to help the public do is articulate which trade-offs they're willing to tolerate in exchange for completion of an affordable housing project and another moratorium.
Is there a way to get cost estimates on the different site plans? Because that could be, I mean, somebody could say, oh, I think Richmond Hill is great, or let's do too small, like Richmond Hill and Locust, but that's
Hillary, that's.
$350 million.
I haven't stopped thinking about that for the last 10 days.
Okay, so
And it's both that, but it's also, if we want to promote a conversation, which is, I think, the third thing. I think we've got to be able to scale it, or people are going to say, well, wait a minute, you got to understand what it's going to cost before you can start to make a decision. Now, I recognize we're not going to tie it down to, a final number, but.
So yes, I have some more information. I mean, if you guys are okay with it, we're just kind of gonna fluidly go back and forth and
If you don't
hammer.
mind.
Yeah, if that's okay with you, it's not the most structured meeting format, but I'm fine with it. What do I have here? So I did some rough math myself on cost estimates for these, based on just a generic $550,000 per unit and $30,000 per parking spot, which are numbers that I think we've heard from multiple people who've been before us before. They're also numbers that I saw Amenta Emma use in helping the committee put together a budget request for this year. So I just felt like that was safe. And in a rough calculation, Locust Avenue comes out between 48 and 56 million, almost 57 million. And the lumberyard schemes 1 and scheme 2, I didn't have scheme 3 at the time I was doing this, come out at 104 to 108 million. So those are the ballparks. Now I did go back to Miles and we talked a little more about it. It wasn't really in their contract to give us cost estimates for these, but he did talk to a construction manager. I'm just reading his email right now, to do a rough cost comparison between the schemes on a cost per residential unit basis. All right, so this doesn't include parking per se, I guess. And basically, there's no numbers here, but you just put them in 2 categories. The more cost-effective schemes with some minor variations between them are Locust schemes 1 and 2, and Lumberyard schemes 1 and 3. Richmond Hill schemes and Lumberyard scheme 2 are more expensive than those first categories by roughly 20 to 25%.
Per unit.
Yes,
Okay.
the cost factor and cost for parking structure, so I think the parking structures is probably the variation in them, and how we've done the parking is probably what's driving this, the cost factor. In cost for parking structures, commercial space and residential space. So yeah, because what I was doing, like I said at the beginning, was just general numbers, but obviously constructability is going to affect whether this is $650,000 unit or $450,000 unit. So that's what Miles was trying to give us there. And one of the categories of things I had to try and throw out tonight is what other information do we need to feel ready to have these conversations? So if what I've just given you is not enough,
Well,
we need to figure out how to get more.
One of the questions, I guess, go ahead, I'm sorry, didn't want to interrupt.
what I was gonna say is, you know, and listening to people talk about Canyon Parish. You know, Scott has in his mind what he thinks it costs to build Canyon Parish. I think it would be ideal if we could get Scott in a room and say, can you build this and make money on it and, you know, break even on it at these kinds of levels.
Okay.
And the reason, and you know, Scott may say, I don't have any idea, but he did build Canyon Parish within his recent memory. Some of these are very similar to Canyon Parish.
Parking's a big delta, because there's all surface parking, and I don't want to be not having a plan that had a closed structure, which gets very expensive. To put ventilation and that sort of thing, but that's the big delta, is the parking.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I was saying that when Krista, you said 38,000, I think was the number you said for parking. I mean, I would have been at I mean, again, is it a parking garage, you know, multiple levels, how much of it's on the land, so to speak? But I do believe when we were looking at a parking garage over on Locust, it was 45,000 a parking space. And I, you know, a while back at universities, I know was, but again, you know, you have to compare, you know, what type of parking you're looking at here. So I think, you know, wrestling those things to the ground. But I think going back to the original question, at the end of this public hearing, what is this little committee trying to accomplish? Because if, you know, if it's take it to a vote and spend the money, then we really need real hard estimates on the numbers, right? If it's directional, then it's, you know, 100 million, 150 million, 200 million, those are, that, you know, that's probably directional enough. So I mean, I just don't have any idea. What's the end game coming into June or July?
I think it's more what you're calling directional would be my sense. I mean, we're not going to have enough information. I don't even know that the architects will have enough information to really give hard numbers. We can give, like we said, orders of magnitude. You know, this is in the $50 million range, this is in the $100 million range, and you know, this parking structure is going to cost more than that parking structure. But I don't know those exact numbers. And so ultimately, like I said, to me, this is a series of trade-offs. I think we could kind of come up, and this is where I was going to go on the substantive part with, I'm not sure we can do it tonight, but I think we need to come up with sort of a list of criteria. I think the pros and cons of each of these schemes are going to fall into similar categories, like, you know, traffic congestion, maybe cost, maybe ability to phase. And so listing these all out and then helping facilitate a public dialogue about which of those they like better than others, which of those criteria they're willing to live with. I think that will help inform our decision in getting down to a preferred alternative. And then I think it also helps the elected officials when we present this to them, because even if we say we really like scheme A, if they decide for whatever reason, cost reasons, phasing reasons, they can't go with scheme A, they're going to go with scheme B, they'll still have, okay, well, the public really is concerned about parking, or traffic, they're really concerned about maxing out the site and too much density being squeezed. Like, we'll be able to articulate the concerns that we've heard, and then hopefully, you know, whatever gets designed can meet those concerns.
Krista,
Yes.
as you know, I've been wondering for the public meeting, would it be enough? I'm thinking it might be to share where we are. Here are the three, we started with a pool of X. We eliminated some that you probably are going to wonder about, and we'll explain why. We got down to these three, and then just as you say, talk about trade-offs and essentially bring our fellow community members into the conversation where we are. And before, which is where I think we'll be, I don't think we'll have an answer because every new thing we learn raises new questions, right? About other additional parking, about costs, et cetera, et cetera. And I am starting to think that there are real advantages to being in that place when we have a public conversation because we're essentially showing our homework. Here's where we are. No one's expecting us to have an answer yet. And then we could talk about the backs and forths, the ups and downs, the trade-offs, and what criteria are most important to people in the community. And maybe that's kind of what you're saying. I feel much more comfortable with that than I do with us trying to wrestle to the ground. Look, we come out voting scheme, whatever it is. Feels
Yeah.
too soon.
I mean, that was one of the questions that I wanted to get us to tonight, but yes, that would be my preferred approach as well. I think I like to go to the public and, like you're saying, here's our homework, here's what we've done. This is a wicked problem. This is a hard challenge. We don't know what the right answer is, and there may be not a singular right answer here. So, help us think through this, and ultimately we have to make a recommendation, but you're here as the public to help us and maybe teach us things and maybe give us criteria that we weren't already thinking of. Maybe there's other things that, we'll come in with a list, but maybe there's going to be more that gets added as we go through this process so that by the time we go to the elected officials, we've done our thinking, we've had the public do some thinking, and we can try and put it out there.
Two questions, and I'm sorry if you discussed this before I came in. Would we present these options first to the full Affordable Housing Committee, and would be a public hearing in front of the full Affordable Housing Committee instead of just us? And secondarily, can we assign work to the Finance Committee to not only give a rough, maybe they could meet with Scott, how much would each cost, like provide them with alternatives, how much ballpark, understanding it's not set in stone, how much would it cost, and what would taxpayers actually be paying for? New Canaan residents through property tax or financing, or what do we get from the state? What would we get? Some sort of, I think that information is very important to people who are going to come out and look at these plans. And I would also suggest that if we have a public hearing, we provide this information somewhere, like on the website or something, so that people come prepared to talk about it instead of being hit with it that night.
Yeah, that's a lot to digest, right?
It's a lot. It's a lot for people to think and to ask residents who haven't been in this soup as long as we have and thinking about it as much to give us their opinions or thoughts on the fly is a little unfair. I think we would have to schedule a second one anyway, so it's just far better to provide that information, even if it's uploaded to the website or we have some mechanism for getting it out so that people can come prepared and it's efficient as it can be. And I think prefacing it as this is something we sort of have to do. So don't come in saying we shouldn't do anything and we should just blow off the statute. That's not our, that's not our mandate.
Yeah.
Krista,
Oh, sorry. I was just
oh,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
that's hard.
No, I know we can't limit what people click.
No, and I would love, I've got an agenda in my mind for how this public meeting flows, but that being said, it is a lot to digest. Just getting people's head around the fact that we have to do this.
Yeah.
If we want to maintain a moratorium, that could be a whole public meeting in itself. And then, another public meeting about here what the options are and here's the trade-offs. So, I don't have the short answer, and maybe it's more than one public meeting. I don't know how much we want to bite off. we all have other things going on in our lives, but I agree with you on that, and yes, I do think there are things that we could and should hand over to the finance committee, and I have suggested that to Chris Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I think it's hard too for and Bill, this kind of goes with the charter commission questions too, which is interesting, is like asking residents generally, like, what do you think about this issue? Instead of presenting them with, here's what we're considering. Like, once you say, here's what we're considering, people are like, oh, great, something tangible to talk about.
Right.
And so I think that that's helpful, because right now it's like for our meetings where you can come and make a public comment, I don't think people really
know exactly what we want to hear or what would be useful.
or
I think
what
one of the things we have to do is, I think, Krista, when we started the meeting, I think you said, I didn't quite get it all, but I thought you said maybe the COP matter would be resolved depending on when our meeting was, right?
I just said that that's something to keep in mind when
Yeah.
we're thinking about
Yeah.
how to keep a public meeting.
So I just think in terms of the public, I think we have to do, to the extent humanly possible, is sort of clear their mind. And one thing, getting the COP matter resolved, if possible. Now, we're not going to accelerate that, but if we understand the timing, I think that'll be helpful. It's resolved, and this is what it means. I think the other thing is, in terms of the Avalon project, I think a lot of people think we solved our problem over there. So explaining that on the agenda. I think the third thing would be, well, we had, I don't know, 7 sites we looked at, and how we got down to these 3 or this one, whichever way you want to present that.
Mhm.
And then, really taking a deeper dive on this particular site and, trying to come up with the cost as well. But I think Hillary asked a great point, how much is this for the, if this is all being paid by the state, or if this is all being paid by rent, what's the big discussion, right? Other than just the use of land. That's not going to be the case, and overruns and all those things that, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other thing is, I guess, have we ever, have we, the town, ever done a project of this magnitude that we're thinking about at the lumberyard? I just don't, I'm not sure. There's a lot of building going on, that we're talking about on these plans. And do we have experience managing something like this? And because, if you don't, things get out of control, right? So how are we going to deal with that? That's all I'm saying. We'll deal with it. We just got to figure out how we're going to deal with it. And we're just not going to give it to Tiger, right? That's not going to happen.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that's a little bit beyond,
Yeah,
what we're
maybe.
now, but
Yeah, but I think people, when you tell somebody it's $100 million project and our share of it is X, there'll be people in the audience who have a lot of questions. So being able to just channel them a little bit, but we're probably never going to get close to a number might get in the church, but we're not going to know we're in the front of the church or the back of the church.
I think you raised a really good point there, about our charter and reminding people, and maybe we need Deanna to go out ahead of us and reiterate that a series of moratoria are the objective. The town has made that decision, and that decision stands.
I think that's really important. I'm sorry to cut you off, Jane.
No, go ahead.
My sense, and I think I've said this before, I think there's a significant kind of a rump caucus in town that believe just keep fighting. We don't need, and they don't understand. They're very smart people, but they've never focused on it and realized that this is something we really need to do, and what the ordinance says. So I think to your point, Jane, before where you talked about showing our homework, I thought that was a good way to phrase it. That just kind of how we got here, just walking people through it. That this something has to be done. Here's why, and that we've done some homework already. But again, it's not a fait accompli. Here's kind of where we're going. But the question I had though was, when that's accomplished, was it your thought that we would kind of report? There's a report that goes back to the full committee that says that here's what we've done, and we're kind of leaning this way. What maybe among us we have a unanimous consensus on one or the other, maybe we don't. Vox Populi said the following, maybe we had 200 people at a meeting, maybe we had, 10. Here's the feedback we got from them. And then we kind of have a discussion among ourselves to suggest one then to the politicians, or to leave it open-ended a little bit.
So, I mean, I think our objective is to ultimately, as a full affordable housing committee, select the preferred option. Hillary brought up the point, and I think it is worth talking about. I hadn't thought this through completely, but like, what is the interplay between our subcommittee and the full committee? And obviously, before we get to preferred option, we have to have involvement with them. Do we have, more involvement with them now on these conversations as we're preparing for the public meeting? I mean, probably. I don't know that I think our subcommittee should do this public meeting on its own. I think it would be best if the full affordable housing committee is.
Yeah, I mean, if I wasn't on the subcommittee and was on the full committee, I would want to see what we collectively were putting forward.
Right. So, I mean, I think maybe we as a subcommittee can do some of the heavy lifting behind how do we want to frame this, what are we thinking for a public meeting, what are we thinking for a survey? But yes, I do think we need then the buy-in of the full committee before we just go forth and do those things. And we need them at the meeting. And then we'll need them to help us.
Yeah, I mean, I
select a
think,
preferred alternative.
yes, and to the extent there could be, just thinking if we're half and half, there could be half of the people on the affordable housing committee who are like, that one's a no-go.
Right.
So why would we put that forth as an option if we wouldn't get buy-in from the whole committee to forward that to the first one?
Right.
So I think it's wise to give them the information, give the full committee the information, say here's what we're thinking of doing, presenting the following options,
Okay.
what do you think?
So I don't know that on our meeting next Monday, I could talk to Chris Wilson. I don't know that we'll have this all figured out to present by then, but B, I don't know that he was giving us the time for that. But maybe at that meeting, we plant the seed that at a follow-up meeting with the full committee, we will come prepared to discuss the alternatives, discuss our public involvement approach, see where everyone else stands. Does that seem reasonable?
So we'll meet next Monday.
Yeah, we meet on Monday.
Yeah, and then the following Monday would be the first week of March.
I know, so I don't.
It starts to get a little bit tight.
I know, we may have to have a special.
Yeah, that's where I was headed.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking as I'm thinking about this interplay between us and the full committee is like, we may need to move at a pace that's different than our standard committee meeting, but I would hope that we could get a full committee together.
Yeah.
This conversation.
And I think, look, the other members of the affordable housing committee, there's a chance that they say, no, you guys go and do a public hearing and then report back to us what you found, the feedback. Understanding that we won't like cull down the number of options, we'll just provide the feedback on each event to the full committee. That might be what comes out. So I think in a subcommittee report context on Monday, which I won't be there, unfortunately, I have a special town council meeting. But I think we can suss out sort of what they're thinking. They might say, go forth and conquer.
Yeah, okay.
Do it.
Right, so I'll take the temperature on Monday and offer that if they want to have a full affordable housing committee meeting, just for us to come back and go over what we've decided to do in terms of public involvement, survey, and approach of the substance of this material, before we just go and do it. We're happy to do that. Something else that came up, I guess maybe in the comment that we should talk to Scott Hobbs about this. One of the things I had on my list was I was thinking that either collectively as a group or individually, I could follow up with the town staff that went on the site walk with Amenta Emma at the beginning of this process to show them also these designs that we've been given and get their feedback, because I think that will also help us kind of start to come up with the pros and cons and the criteria that we're trying to get to. So I don't know if you guys, we could ask them to come to a meeting and do it in this format. I could send them an email and ask them just to email me, like, that might be the easiest, but I'm open to your thoughts if you want to do it in a bigger way.
I think that's a good idea, and I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Okay.
I'd especially like to hear what Tiger has to say.
Okay.
Is she involved in the walk around?
He was.
Yeah.
Tiger, Maria Coplet, the town engineer, Sarah Carey, the planner, and Kathleen Holland, the wetlands, which there really aren't wetlands on any of the sites.
First, I think that's a good idea. I think we have to urge them to come and hear what we see.
Okay, so do we want to invite them to another meeting then, maybe? Is that what we're talking about?
Or give them plans, let them think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if they need to come, but that's a really good point. I mean, particularly like Tiger sees something,
Yeah, because they may see things that we don't even know about and just say
Locust has
that's
a
a
big
no-go.
drainage line that comes down the hill and it could be a showstopper.
Right.
Mhm.
Um,
Would you have them come to subcommittee versus the full committee?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think we just need to start to be cognizant of how many meetings we want to have. I mean, I'm up for it, but the more meetings, the more we do this all in meetings, I'm thinking probably the quickest way and easiest way would be to just email them and get their feedback, and then I could share it and we could discuss it in upcoming meetings. And if there's things we don't understand and need clarifications on, we could ask them to attend, but it's up to you guys. Do you want to start with an email and see their feedback and then decide if we want to?
I think it would, I know some of those people pretty well, and I
Yeah.
think it would be valuable to have them in the same room,
Okay.
kind of roughing off each other.
Okay.
But
Then let me see about
I'm also
scheduling.
aware, calling on them to do an after hours meeting or something.
Oh, they do lots of after hours meetings. And unfortunately, Scott Hobbs was not on that site walk. I have had other conversations in passing with him about this, including talking about our budget. So he knows that, we're working on this stuff,
I'd like to
but
sit with him.
I think he needs to also be present, just like you're saying.
And I feel very comfortable. I know it's got really well.
Yeah. He'll have thoughts on that. All right.
Could we not get, a couple of builders that do these types of projects, 2 or 3 of them? And just, they are professionals, they go through, they're gonna want to show well, because one day we're gonna probably be bidding something. And just ask them their opinions and ask them what they think costs are. They're in a business, they would probably be able to get to it pretty close, pretty quick.
Well, like I said, we're pretty far from anything constructible in these drawings. These are very conceptual. So other than the high level order of magnitude costs that we already have, I'm not sure anybody's going to be able to tell you specifically.
No, I agree with that, but I think, I would imagine a builder could come in and say that, this is $150 million project or $100 million project, and then give us some parameters. These are really, people that are, pretty knowledgeable, and it would seem they could have a lot of input, probably a lot more experience than our town employees in terms of building. Town employees, of course, can contribute a lot in terms of sites and pluses and minuses in terms of how it fits in. But just ask somebody who does it all the time, what do you think about this? I don't think it could hurt.
I guess my initial sense on that is a couple of things. One, I'm a little hesitant to involve private builders this early in a conversation when there's obviously the town is ultimately going to have to bid this out, and giving anybody sort of early access feels, maybe I'm overthinking it, but I'm not sure how I feel about that. I do think that we'll get good feedback from Scott Hobbs and Tiger, and I think, Amenta Emma's feedback from talking to their construction manager. So I think we have other ways to get that right now, and I would, if we get further along and we don't feel like we've gotten it, then I guess I'd consider that option, but right off the bat.
But, other than by name, I really don't know Scott well. Has he done something like this?
I don't know this name.
Canyon Parish.
Yeah, but I view that as being a different scale, but other than that,
Units,
It's 100 units.
pardon me?
It's 100 units.
bigger than what we're looking at for Locust and smaller than Lumberyard, so it's in the middle.
Okay.
So that's how I would handle that for now.
What's the reluctance? I don't get the reluctance from getting asking experts in the area to you know, just to give us some input, sort of like having our town employees come in.
Well, so our town employees are paid by the town and these builders would ultimately be competing for a contract from the town. And
Yeah.
I just, to me, it feels too soon to be getting, and beyond the purview of this committee. I mean, when this goes out to bid, it will not be managed by the Affordable Housing Committee, I don't think. I
Right.
think someone else is gonna be handling the construction management. Like, that's just a whole different field than what we're doing here.
Yeah. I was just wondering, like, if you took someone like AFD, which is, you know, pretty big contractor in town, just, or not in town, but in the area, just ask them.
They built Cannon Parish at AP, but again, they'd be probably one of the first two online to probably one of the bidders, to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, it just strikes me as kind of like giving most favored nation status to a builder or allow, I don't know, I think that's it's a little bit fraught, from an optics perspective. And, yeah, I don't know, I mean, I think right now, a back of the envelope, like min-max from Scott would be appropriate and that's what we're doing now. But like, I do think, again, I think the finance subcommittee can start getting to work and taking estimates and figuring out how it measures out. I mean, like, you know, what kind of grants could we get? What kind of, I don't know. That's good, because I'm not on that committee. But I think understanding like some sort of burden on the taxpayer is gonna be an important metric.
I agree with that.
Be what the total cost of the construction is.
I guess what I'm trying to avoid going to the town as a committee or subcommittee and saying it's gonna, you know, we think it's gonna cost X and being wrong by double X, you know.
Oh,
So,
sure.
that's all I'm trying to avoid, you know.
Yeah, I hear you.
And just saying we talked to one person about it, you know, it sort of undermines everything. But if you know, I mean, look, if it's all of you feel that we shouldn't do that, that's fine. But I mean, I would think maybe AFD or some of these other contractors aren't the right person. But if you went to someone who was a real estate developer who wouldn't be involved in this, they could give you the numbers like that. You know, I mean, they can. I mean, do this all the time. I mean, I'm on the board of Blackstone. I'm not. They wouldn't come and do it, but I'm just suggesting if I asked them, I bet you they'd be within a nickel.
Like
Yeah.
I said, I think we have resources between Scott, between Chris Wilson, who does this over in Ireland, between I'm blanking on
I
his
think my
name.
time would be very helpful.
Amanda Emma, you know, and their construction manager, but who's the
What about arts?
Art Casadena? I was thinking of Dave McCarthy.
McCarthy.
I mean, he obviously helped get Ian Parish financed.
Great.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, I think there is already a group of people that we can kind of get feedback from, and I just, with Hillary's concerns, I feel the same. I just think it's a little fraught to go ask people who will eventually potentially be bidding on this project to give us feedback on it.
That's gonna be a thorny problem too, to Hillary's point about trying to like present costs. What Bill was saying, we're still in a general range now. You know, concepts, we got general unit numbers, but I just know from experience when we did Cannon Parish and for clients of mine, you think you have it under control, even far along the process. There'll be a swing. Oh, wait a minute, we have a problem with the elevators. That's another $500,000, or
Yeah,
right.
or some health code thing came in. Everyone forgot about until last time. Another swing of 250,000. I was involved with a somewhat similar thing in Darien when Darien bought Great Island, and they brought it to the public. But it was very finite. They knew it was going to cost what was it, $87 million. They had a budget to the side for development costs and to do things there. They knew what the bonding was going to be, generally what the rate was going to be.
The Zika property.
Yeah, there's Steinkraus, yeah, but Zigo's next door. And they could even tell what the tax bills were going to go up generally per household, you know. And then once that was presented, everyone could do a thumbs up or a thumbs down. They had already gotten past the fact that we need to do this. I don't see how we could be in that position, you know, at a public meeting. We just don't have that.
it's too conceptual.
Yeah.
And part of me is like, how much do we want? I mean, I get that we have to talk about money a little bit because that's a big issue, but given that we're not going to really know, I mean, until you choose a site and get a lot further in your architectural design, you're not going to know. And
Krista,
you're in construction, so it just
Could-
feels like we're opening a can of worms that we can't close. Yes, Jane.
sorry to interrupt you. Could we turn this over to the finance subcommittee and let them
Yeah.
wrestle with this part since it's technically their area?
Yes, I think that that's one thing we should do at the meeting on Monday is, ask them to step up and give us ideas of what this would cost and how it could possibly be financed. And I mean, in my opinion, my guess is that it's still gonna be very high order, like,
Yeah.
maybe 50% low income housing tax credit coverage and, this and then, this grant, and then the rest of it's gonna be bond funded by the town. You might not have exact numbers, you might just have like percentages of what things.
So maybe part of the problem is, you're much closer to these types of things than I am. But so we have our public meeting and we come up with a number, and the number's, pick a number, 100. So what happens next? We turn it over to town council and they do their thing, or what happens next? Because, and then we're out of it at that point? I mean,
So, yeah, I mean, my thought in terms of how this proceeds, and obviously nobody has a crystal ball here, is that we do a public meeting, we get feedback on the trade-offs that the public is open to and those that they're not. We come back as the full committee, the full affordable housing committee, and talk about how we get to a preferred option based on that information. We come to whatever we think the preferred option is, the site and the scheme. And ultimately, I hope we write up a report that goes to town council and the board of selectmen that says, here's the process we went through. Here's, how we landed where we landed. Here's what we heard from the public, blah, blah, blah. It's up to you now. And we hand it off.
so when the superintendent was talking about a North School, I mean, I really wasn't following it, but did he say it's 300 plus for 100 for overruns or something like that? Is that?
Yeah, he said 300 for the new school and 100 for renovating the other three.
Yeah, so I mean, is that where you want to be? So, I mean, I have no idea what's a good number or a bad number, but you want to be in the sense that he put that number out there, so he presumably felt pretty good with it. Because my concern is if we go to a meeting with the sophisticated people we have in this town, and assume it's highly attended, if the numbers don't really hold up, I think people will think, we'll discredit ourselves. That's why, I don't mean final numbers. I really don't have final plans, but there'll be people in that audience who are real estate people. They'll say they can't do it for that. That's ridiculous.
So I think we among ourselves need to get clear on what we want, what we're trying to accomplish, like as I just described to you in terms of what we eventually give to our elected officials, and B, what we want out of this public meeting. And this public meeting is not a sales job on, whether we do the lumberyard or locust. That's not actually even what the focus should be. The focus should be, we have to do something. Here are a couple of options. What do you like about these options? What do you not like about these options? What concerns you most? Are you most concerned about traffic? Or are you most concerned about how far you're gonna have to walk to park at the train station? And maybe maybe the public says we're really concerned about costs, and we say, okay, we're at the very beginning of this process, we don't know the exact cost. We have kind of high level numbers right now, but we can, if the public doesn't want to pay for this, then that really puts a wrinkle in the plan of us keeping moratoriums our goal, because this is an expensive process.
Okay.
Would it make sense at the public meeting to have Scott or a couple of people just walk us through very generally how projects like this do get paid for, so that the public understands the combination of financing strategies that were used, for example, on Canaan Parish and are used in other projects like this? Because otherwise, I don't know, people will probably assume it's state, or assume it's taxpayer and so on. I think maybe it'd be helpful to say, look, this isn't our area, but we want to explain to you in theory how these things get paid for. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean.
I think it has to just be really high level. I think maybe we frame the meeting has to be, you know, project oriented. Here's how we got here, here's what we're doing, here's what we're looking at, and we want to get your opinions on it. Maybe we need to eschew commentary on costs as much as possible, except maybe at a high level. Because I worry what Bill said too, that we get out over our skis and then we've made a mistake. And I don't think we're going to be prepared to be in a position like my Darien example, where we could say it's going to cost your tax bill is going to go up $650 over the next 10 years, all things being equal. There's no way we can get to that.
No. Yeah, and like I said, it's too early in the process. Really, I think what we're trying to do is socialize people to the problem that we're facing and that the trade-offs that have to be made in order to solve this problem. And you know, eventually someone's gonna have to talk to them about what this would cost, but I think that's a little bit beyond us. You know, people will bring it up. People, in my experience, will bring up all sorts of things in the public meeting that may or may not be the questions that we're trying to answer. And, you know, you have to have a place to record all of that and, you know, hear all of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go down the rabbit hole.
And I'm not adverse to Jane's point about whether Scott or
Yeah.
Castle, you know, people really understand how their financing goes together. Available, maybe just to talk generally about it. I don't think that's harmful.
Well,
I think that's could be helpful.
I think we need that type of information in whatever report we give to the elected officials anyway. So whether it's part of the public meeting or whether it's part of what we put together later, it's information we're going to need. So I do think that one of the asks of the finance committee at our meeting on Monday is going to be, can you guys take a look at these and start to think about costs and financing options?
So what happens after we finish our meeting? Just to finish your thought earlier, Krista, it goes, who does it go to at that point? I mean,
After we finish the
realize
public,
to go to town council or?
No,
How-
it would go first to the first selectman,
So the first
board of selectmen, board of finance, and then to town council. And town council has ultimate authority over the sale, lease, or purchase of town land, so we would have to approve any project ultimately.
but so I think the first selectman and the board of selectmen would have to kind of
Buy into it.
and commit that like that we want, this is what we want to do, we're gonna go down this path, and then they start the process of getting
Yes.
to different.
So for instance, like with the police station bill, the recent renovation, when that was. When I, like, literally my first meeting on town council was a joint meeting with public meeting between the board of finance and town council, where the first selectman and some committee member, some people that he had pulled together, like Stuart Salavini and Paul Foley, presented 11 options. And there was a ballpark number for each one. And then we gave feedback as the two boards sitting there all together about what was gonna fly, what wasn't. Like, we immediately nixed the softball field, right? I mean, so, and then eventually, once we determined that something needed to be done at the police station and we focused on the existing station, at that point, a building committee was established who was in charge of then presenting a plan and how much it was gonna cost, and it went through all three levels multiple times. We got town council got updates multiple times. And so that, I just think of that sort of as an analogous process. I wasn't part of town council when Canaan Parish was getting built, so I don't know if that is customary in this context with building housing, but that's typically how it goes. I mean, board of financing would ultimately have to figure out, I think, in balancing what we might get from the state or federal government, or if there's vouchers or if there's not, or however the mix is. But board of finance would have to figure out, you know, how much the town's gonna bond, because obviously this would be a bondable project, and then ultimately town council would have to approve it.
This is probably
I will have to approve it.
Yeah,
I'll have to get
yeah.
the planning and zoning as well.
that's
So
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, Canaan Parish, we had gotten to the point, we had a full pro forma, you know, all laid out. It was pretty precise, you know, everyone then could bless on that.
Yeah, and with that one though, you were blessed that you already had the site. Like there wasn't,
The town didn't put the land in. the town didn't put the land into that project, which is what we're asking them to do this time.
Well, the town owns the land now.
Yeah, it was the Cannon Parish land,
It
yeah,
was
so it was
Cannon Parish.
just.
Yeah, I mean, it had already been built on, but the town technically owns the land, I think.
What I think would happen is that, and I could be wrong, is that in the probably the next, one of the next budget cycles, the town would have to approve through its budget cycle some measure of a project, even if it's like project development, like we would have to pay for plans and we would, so part and parcel of that is explaining to the various funding bodies what you need from the outset and what the ultimate budget might be, because it is town land and there will be town funds used for it. Having the land already is helpful, incredibly helpful. But I think for the purposes of this public hearing, you know, you might be right. I think people are gonna ask for like some ballpark that we're not bound by, but it really should be about like take away, like there are elected officials that will figure out how much the town has an appetite to pay for. Right now, we're looking for feedback on these three and we're not deciding it based on this either, but it's important feedback just on the sites themselves. Right?
Yeah, the qualifications of the sites.
Yeah, and like, I even envision a very simple chart that can be distributed or at least put on the screen that's like, here's what we need X number of units for this moratorium and for the next moratorium. And then the three projects, this is what we get out of these three sites estimate. You know, here's what we have left over for a future moratorium, like really easy numbers for people to follow, because people might ultimately be willing to invest more. They might say, well, I'll do a more expensive project if it means it sets us up for 8 years. And we don't have to redo. So I think something's very simple like that, that is like, here's what we need, like this is what we are required to do next time. It's what we need. We can have more. You know, I don't want us to get bogged down into like, here's the law and what we have now, here's what our mandate was. We have to come up with 150 units and here are 3 ways we can do that. Period.
Yeah, the genesis of the ordinance and genesis of the ordinance was that, do you want the town to take control of this? Or do you want to be subject to the fiat of if you're willing to let things go the way that they are now, then you know you're gonna vote against it.
It might be helpful to read the ordinance. I've got it right here. There's one paragraph. The Affordable Housing Committee shall develop scenarios, we're doing a lot of this, under which moratorium under section 830G could be achieved and shall measure public support for each scenario. Each scenario shall address the type of projects involved, whether they would utilize town property or require land acquisition, the projected cost of development and maintenance of each project, the impact on infrastructure, the likely sources of funding, and the impact on taxpayers. So it's a fairly comprehensive ordinance. I don't know one of those many issues we want to address at this time, but it's if you take the ordinance literally, there's a lot of information we have to pull together ultimately.
I think a lot of that, wouldn't that be allowed from the finance folks, you know,
Yeah.
when the full committee is making a recommendation? You know, when we combine what we've done with what we find.
Yeah.
Scenarios shall address the type of projects involved, whether they would utilize town property or require land acquisition, the projected cost of development and maintenance of each project, the impact on infrastructure, likely sources of funding, and the impact on taxpayers would seem to me to be Chris' subcommittee.
Yeah, so we're at the first, like the initial stages of that, which is here are 3 scenarios. And if something out of the gate gets 0 public support and people are adamantly against it, like then that sounds to me like what should be included in a final report that's presented to the town bodies.
Right, that's, to me, that's the outline for the report that we eventually provide.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, but I mean, I think we should be thinking about how we're gonna get that information together so it can be distilled down into a report.
I think it's time for the finance subcommittee to start doing some homework.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, I think, you know, that we are in charge of identifying sites and we've done so, and now we have rough sketches. We've done that. We're trying to get public, support for one or another, or not, and ideas. And then it's like, okay, now how do we pay for it? And maybe that's what they need to start doing in concert with the work that we're doing,
Mhm.
you know? I don't think it's fair that we should have to do all of that.
No, I think
I don't think
that's right.
Yeah, we can.
Does anybody have any, any idea as to how the land cost or the land that we're going to be using for either of these sites, how that gets into the equation? So, you've got three sites and I have no idea how the town acquired them, but what they paid for them. So what is the cost per unit of the land? And then what is maybe the fair market value per unit of the land? I think at some point, somebody, I assume in government accounting you do that, Mike. Maybe you know that, or maybe somebody else knows that. I have no idea. That's certainly what you do in business.
That sounds like a finance committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Basically, at a high level, though, the land is a subsidy in this case, by the town providing land, that's part of the
We could
subsidy.
even anticipate that the town might be called upon to pay for the parking, the part of the parking structure, which is for existing parking spaces.
Yes,
That they will build that and then we'll pay balance above it.
Right, yeah, because I don't know how much, some of the affordable housing finance sources could be used to pay for parking structures that or not. But again, that's a question for the finance subcommittee, 'cause I don't.
I think it's enough for us as the subcommittee to say,
Yeah.
we feel committed to providing the same number of parking spaces that these lots have now. And then on top of that, at least one parking space per unit. And I think that's,
I think that absolutely is the right way to go. I think we've
Yeah.
been on the beam on that.
day one, yeah. And I think that's an important piece of, I was just having a conversation with somebody. And they're like, well, you're gonna take away all that parking. I'm like, no, that's rule number one. So we will keep it. And it could be an increased revenue stream if somebody wants covered parking, like if
Right.
there is that option. So I think people hearing that, it's a relief, because I think with the lumberyard plan that was done when it was anticipated to be Avalon and there was all those plans, my team might know this better than I do, there was not a proposal to maintain the number of spaces that currently exist. And so that's something that's top of mind for people who have been here a
There was
lot.
one iteration, remember it correctly, it didn't go very far. It was, I'm not sure if this was maybe Rob, Roz was way back. The one for the lumberyard, they called in like Stanford Hospital, they called in a bunch of different stakeholders or providers, and talked about elevating the deck and having parking underneath, and on top putting housing and putting in some health facilities, and maybe having some senior, maybe have some affordable. But it kind of died on time.
Yeah,
But I think that's another thing that should be highlighted when we talk about the costs and the financing, is that we're providing decked parking for the town. And so this is an affordable housing project, but there's another cost that the taxpayers are paying for here that hopefully also provides benefit to them. Okay.
all right, so are the next steps to bring this up at Monday's meeting, a proposal that we as an affordable housing committee, whether it's this subcommittee or the committee itself, hold a public meeting in the next couple of months to gauge the public's reaction to 3 proposed scenarios?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes, so 2 things I'm gonna bring up at the meeting on Monday. One is give them an update on where we are, that we plan on having a public meeting. Hopefully by then tonight, we can have a little bit of an outline of dates, ranges of dates when we want to do these things. And offer to give them a full update before we go forth and do all of that, in terms of what we're going to be covering at the meeting, what's going to be in the survey, how they can be helpful at the meeting if they want to attend. And probably a special full affordable housing committee meeting if that's what they want. If they say nope, we're good, you guys go and do it, we'll go and do it. But we'll also ask them that the finance committee needs to start working on costs associated with a project of this scale, and also identifying funding sources and potential percentages that they might be able to cover.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 things I have for Monday. I have that we're going to schedule a follow-up meeting with the town staff to talk to us about the pros and cons of these different projects. So I was going to share my screen. Let's do that. Stop right.
There you go.
Okay. So just go here. This isn't what I want to do. So something that I think this is where my head was going when I was trying to digest these different schemes, and we don't need to go through any of this in detail tonight. I'm just showing you guys so that you have a sense of where I thought we were headed. And so I went through each scheme. There's 5 in total now because there was a third one added for the lumberyard that you may hopefully have looked at. And so I just kind of started spitballing the pros and the cons that I saw for each of these. And so I was thinking that if we individually did this type of work, and I'm happy to share what I've done, and then you guys could add or cross off from there and come back together, like I think that would be really meaningful for us to have a good sense of, okay, here's what we think are the upsides of this project, and here's what we think are the downsides of this project. And then ultimately, in another iteration of this, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot on my computer. I tried to make a chart.
Oh, excellent.
Comparing these things. These have my high level costs, but then over here on the bottom left, you see how I have criteria. I'm not sure these are the right criteria, that these are even good criteria. But I was trying to get to, like, once you do the pros and cons, you start to realize the same kind of things come up over and over, whether it's, do we have full control of the site? How complex is this type of project to do because of the number of buildings or the type of parking? Is this project, for instance, I think the locust ones are a little tight on the lot, such that if through the design process we have to move things around, the geometry is just going to be really tough there, and you might end up having to lose some units. And if you lose too many units, you're not going to make your moratorium. So like it's just a tighter site. Whereas lumberyard has a little more flexibility in terms of your ability to move things around and still make the moratorium. So, like I said, these were just beginnings of thoughts that I had about. Once I started doing the pros and cons, I started to see sort of some common categories, and I'm not sure these are the right titles, but this is really what I see us kind of going for the public. Yeah, I can share both of these things with you. But
I'm glad you did it, but I think we're all willing to
yeah,
put our shoulder to it too.
but just to help everyone kind of envision where I see the public meeting going, it's a conversation about, okay, you've seen locust, you've seen lumberyard, this one offers more flexibility if we have to move things around. This one offers less flexibility. This one might cause more traffic issues. This one may cause that type of thing. So that's really where we're getting to the trade-off conversation. And I think if we collectively do the pros and cons and then come together, we'll be able to kind of come up with what those categories of trade-offs are and evaluate each site according to those. So is that
sounds wise.
helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's why I wanted to share my screen. So I will share those 2 things, and
I would just be cautious about the way you respond, if you share them and then people start adding their comments, that could be a FOIA violation.
Okay.
So what we should do is
each kind of be your own.
we need to come together and do that in a
Subcommittee.
subcommittee
Yeah.
meeting. So I just want to caution that we should not, an email chain like that is a meeting. And it's FOIAble, and we just have FOIA, like update.
We're just there.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So I just want everyone to be aware of that, and that like you should do your work and then you can share it in a meeting. Even if it's by Zoom, we can all meet by Zoom and talk and discuss that, but.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking, is that I would share it with you guys. We'd follow a schedule or schedule a follow-up meeting and then come together, and Jane could say, I added this, and you could say I subtracted that, and we could kind of workshop it together as a group.
Should we all call Krista, or is that one-on-one calls, or is that a violation?
No,
we'll do it together.
Do a subcommittee meeting.
We'll schedule a subcommittee meeting to do it. And maybe, so probably before we have that subcommittee, you guys think we should talk to the town staff before we have the meeting to talk about our pros and cons, or do we want to kind of get our heads straight on what we think are the pros and cons and then talk to the staff?
I think it's better to get them looking at it.
I was saying that what my saying is, we know we're gonna do that.
Okay,
We've got a head start on that.
okay,
Let's just.
so let's
get
do that
Let's do
first.
them free associating. Well,
Right.
yeah, I'm always
I think-
worried about this one, or something like.
You know, it's almost like the bingo card. We'll each have the pros and cons in front of us and they'll be talking. You might be like, oh, yep, we gotta add this one here and that one there. And then when we come back together, it'll help you do your homework. That's what I'm saying.
And it might be that there's no issue with any of that, you know, the simple answer could be from Tiger, like, I don't see a major structural problem with any of them, and Sarah might say the same thing, and
Right,
Kathleen might say the same, you know, so it could be an easy,
could be an easy meeting.
it could be, or even, yeah.
It probably would be.
I don't know,
But it could be.
it never is, but you know, hope springs eternal.
Okay, so we have 2 meetings for ourselves to follow up to kind of get ourselves. We'll come back to that.
You want me to reach out to Scott?
Oh, I was just gonna email them all as a group and see if I could get them some,
Scott?
including Scott. I don't know, Jane, I don't wanna cover the full parking thing right now, but I do feel like we need to get feedback from somebody who's worked in the parking department or with the parking commission on this, and you know, if nothing more, there's obviously gonna be a short-term construction disruption to town parking. But I don't know what other issues they may see, so I don't know if we can get somebody to attend the meeting the way we might be able to get Tiger and Maria, but at least maybe I can find someone to
Yeah.
give us some feedback.
Include Sarah on the too?
I'm gonna include Sarah, yeah, Sarah, Kathleen, Tiger and Maria. And, you know, I don't know if we need feedback from fire and police, I wrote that down. I mean, again, I can find out from Sarah who I would ask if they have any comments at this early stage on it, and if they do, I could let them know when the meeting is, they could come, but.
Yeah.
I don't have a direct connection.
About the question of this, I know it came up earlier about the school district. I mean, I realize,
Oh, yeah,
I don't have kids at school, so I don't know what's pros and cons, but I'm sure it'll be an issue, right? I mean, we just leave that to the end.
I mean, it's also hard because we don't know the exact unit types of, you know. I think we generally know that we want more 2 and 3 bedroom units, which would bring more families, but until we have a number, we don't really know how many kids, until we know how many kids, I don't know how we.
I think it's fair to identify under current districting, what elementary school district the proposed scenarios fall in. I think that's fair. And I don't think we assign a number to it. I don't think we assume that every unit's gonna have a child in it that's going to elementary school. I think though, it's a helpful data point to know which district it falls in, because if your goal is that, you know, East bears a lot of the brunt right now of multifamily housing of all types. And East is absolutely bursting at the seams. So for some people, it might be a priority that we distribute fairly around town. Where kids that live in multifamily housing go. And so I just think it's a helpful data point, I think.
The housing authority would have some data generally, you know, per 100 units, how many kids are in schools. That's getting in the weeds too much. But I mean, any of these 3 sites really could be placed in any of the 3 school districts.
Yeah. I just think it's helpful to know. I mean, with Saks and the high school, it kind of is what it is, because everybody's just gonna go to the same school, but knowing where they might go to elementary school, it could also inform, I don't know, Brian might have an opinion about that and where he, you know, feels like.
I think that Krista or somebody, Hillary, somebody should ask Brian. Just tell him what we're thinking about. He might say, "Oh my God, no, don't do that." You know, just I don't know. You know, we should ask. To me, it's an input.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm happy to, I was gonna say, do you have?
Yeah.
Connection there, yeah. Okay, so we talked about pros and cons generally, we talked about talking to the staff people. Are we in general agreement that we should target a public meeting mid-April?
Well, no earlier.
No, yeah, it sounds like we have a lot of work to do.
But I think mid-April's great if we're ready. Sounds like we have a lot to do, but that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, I
And-
mean, I think we have a lot of the information that we
Yeah.
need, it's just a matter of putting it in a presentable format.
Right.
Which it's pretty close, because you did a lot of work on it, you're like, that's great.
Kristen, you see that in this public meeting, um, can we fail in that meeting? Can we, I mean, is it just, we're just sharing information. Is there anything, is there a negative that could come out if we're not, if
I think if we manage expectations well, we cannot fail.
enough failed?
If we set ourselves up where the people who come to listen are expecting something that we don't deliver, then we will have failed. But I think that's how we manage expectations.
Okay, fair.
And I think my experience is if we're clear with what we're asking the public to give us feedback on, I mean, we're asking them to come, we're asking them to learn, but we're asking for feedback as well. And so to just say, hey, you want to give us any feedback, I think that could end up in a fail because you don't know, you're going to get all sorts of things. Whereas if we are more focused on, here's what we see as the trade-offs, what do you see as the trade-offs, and have the dialogue that way, I think, the more we can keep the conversation focused
Good.
on what we want out of it, the more successful we're going to be.
Right.
So yeah, Hillary, before you came, we talked about all of the different school breaks between now and
Okay.
mid-April, and that's
Well,
how I landed on mid-April.
Yeah, I'm just looking quickly at the budget schedule, because town council is about to, like, right now, the Board of Finance is hearing all the budget things, town council is gonna have meetings twice a week. And then I think our final budget vote is usually around the 1st of April, so that should work. I just wanna double check so that I don't say the wrong thing.
And you were talking about the week of the 13th, is that?
Yeah, well, that's the first week back from public school spring break. And let me see what the week after that is. So I mean, I would say the weeks of the 13th or the 20th would be,
Yeah, that, most of those work pretty well for me. Not that
what we're
matters.
targeting. No, but I mean, if some of you aren't gonna be here, that's kind of important
So-
information.
April 14th, which is a Tuesday, the town council has their final budget vote.
Okay,
So just keep that in mind. We have meetings in April on the 2nd and the 14th scheduled right now. Sometimes in between there, we have other meetings that get scheduled, special meetings. So
so I think maybe we should target after April 14th.
yeah, I would do the week after soonest.
Okay, so that'd be the week of April.
The week after April 13th?
Yeah, so that's the week of April 20th. And this, there's a lot of details that will have to be parsed out in terms of
Right.
where we're gonna have this and is the room available and all of that. So for
Okay,
now,
that's fine.
I'm
Okay.
trying to kind of chart a path that's generic.
But at least the town hall meeting room will be available, which is
Yeah.
important. Because if we expect a crowd, you need that room. We can't artificially. We can't
You know,
limit the number of people who could participate from the public because we couldn't get the room. Like, we need to get the biggest room we can get so that we can accommodate as many, we can't limit it for a public meeting.
It's not a.
You don't mind if I sign off?
Yeah. Well, and I'll say that during the POCD process, we had some of the more interactive meetings, and we will need to talk about what the format of this meeting is, but over at the Lapham Center, there's pretty big rooms there, so
The library room is great too.
the library room, yeah, so.
Great.
Yeah, we'll have to look around and figure out the right spot for the type of meeting we wanna have. I'm thinking, but I want your feedback, that we wait until we have that meeting we open the survey after the public meeting. Meaning, we've introduced the public to this concept, we've had conversations with whoever is able to attend. Hopefully, we'll have a recording of said meeting that we can then implant at the beginning of a survey. And then open the survey for 3 weeks maybe after the public meeting to get a different metric of feedback from people.
And I guess we have, the way I guess the thing. The survey has to be standalone, while it will be a complement to whatever meeting we are able to pull off. It'll have to stand alone because we want feedback from people who weren't able to or chose not to go to the meeting. So
Right.
we'll have to have a preamble and some description which squares with what we said at the meeting.
Right, I mean, I think, like I said, hopefully we can embed a link to the video of the meeting in that. Is everyone gonna, I mean, if this is let's just say an hour and a half, 2 hour meetings, everyone's gonna sit there and watch that before they fill out our 10-minute survey, probably not. So we'll have to have some other ways to get them that information, but at least we have the
Yeah.
options to make that possible. All right, so that, the survey then would probably be open through like mid-May. I'll just put the 18th. And press releases, I'm thinking maybe we do one before the public meeting and then one after the public meeting, one announcing the public meeting and then one really focusing on the survey to get people who didn't attend the public meeting. Or I don't know, maybe we just do one, but
And if we do one before the public meeting, I just want to offer up again the idea that we have Deanna intro it by, again, we reiterate what our charter was, but she reiterates that that strategy is what the town wants. Put it in the context, right,
yeah,
from on the invitation, so people understand
yeah,
we're not arguing about if.
right.
And I'm sure Deanna would be happy to put it in her newsletter, which
Yeah,
actually
be
got
great.
a lot of feedback when she did that, when we were recruiting for the charter commission. We got a lot of great candidates that way who read about it in her newsletter, so we can ask her if she doesn't have to take a position on it, but she can certainly say that, you know, we have this commission and it's to figure this out, and so come to the public meeting is this date. She doesn't have to put her thumb on the scale, but
Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't know if we need to do a separate press release on top of the notice, and we can ask like Mike, Dinan, and Peter to put it in the Sentinel and the New Canaanite, and publicize it. I don't know, a formal press release is needed, but I
don't know how we get them the right information.
Yeah.
I'm using press release.
Okay.
Generic.
got it,
sense.
a little
Like,
P, little R, got it,
Yeah.
okay.
Here's information, please.
Yeah.
Give it out somehow. All right, I don't know if we'll be able, these are questions that I had left over from last time that we may or may not be able to answer tonight. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we answer these when we talk about the pros and cons at a future meeting, but we need to figure out whether we're keeping Richmond Hill as an option that we want to present to the public, or if it becomes part of the narrative of how we got to where we are, but because it cannot produce a full moratorium on its own, we're not continuing with it.
I like the idea of including it.
Yeah,
Including it as an option.
Yeah, it's one of the three.
Okay. But that, I mean, if we make it an option, then we make it an option that people all like Richmond Hill and we can't get a full moratorium for 2032.
no, I think we point that out though, I think we say.
That's the con.
Like, this is, we cannot get there with this. But there might be an appetite to do something small at Locust and something small at Richmond Hill. I don't know. Like, that might be a viable alternative to doing something very large at the lumberyard. I don't know what the temperature is on that, and I think it's helpful information
Okay.
that we've already got, and so why not include it? I don't know. I don't think it turns it then into something we would have to do, even if, if we can't get a moratorium, then I don't think people are gonna buy into it. I think they get that like, that's not that can't, we should put it in the cons, this cannot be a sole option, like, period.
Well, and I think if, again, to go back to the focus of what we're trying to do in the public hearing meeting is to get people to focus on the trade-offs, I think there's trade-offs to doing a smaller site approach like Richmond Hill that are worth having as part of the conversation, so.
I think there's some plausibility to people saying, well, we like doing smaller scale, so let's do Richmond Hill, let's put something over in Locust lot or something in Lumberyard lot or something that's a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Even if it costs more, that's a.
Yeah, even if it costs more, consistent with what you're saying, it's a trade.
Well, and I think we should put that in, like, Richmond Hill will not get us where we need, like, not a sole option. Could possibly be combined with another one, but will be very expensive. Like, and I think even if you say it that way, that's like, this will be double the cost. People, that's a con.
Right.
I just don't know what people's appetite is.
No,
Right.
that's very clear. I like the way you both said that, I think that's.
Okay, let's.
Because I think there is some possibility people will choke on the scale of what's being proposed for the lumberyard, or even Locust Avenue.
I agree.
I think they're just say, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just like I like giving people more options, and then if it's cost prohibitive, like, it's cost prohibitive, then it's, but you know, it's something to keep in mind, maybe for the next time. Maybe we have to do lumberyard, and then maybe next time we can do a couple small, maybe the whole state changes their law and they fund everything, I don't know. But I think it's important information to have out there, that like, we looked at this and this is, you know, our sort of on the scale, it's way over here, but it's an option.
Okay. It sounds like I don't hear anyone saying that we're trying to, before the public meeting, get down to one option for each. I think that we're planning on, from what I heard tonight, presenting everything that Amenta Emma basically gave us and showing the pros and cons of those different things. Which I think, to Jane's point, shows the public that you're right here with us doing our homework. There is no foregone conclusion. We haven't narrowed anything down. We're just all it is an a la carte menu that we need to choose from. And then last time we also debated a little bit whether we should show the conceptual drawings that Amenta Emma's provided, or just give numerical summaries. I personally lean on, I think we need to show the drawings. I think it's hard for people to conceive what this could look like. I mean, if you tell me 156 units at Lumberyard, and I have no, I mean, that could seem tiny in my head, right? Like, I just don't know until I see a picture. I think there's a lot of people that would need to see that.
Personally, I think I would, flash them up. I mean, I wouldn't spend a lot of time laboring through them, but I mean, I just think it shows the depth of work we've done, and I think it gives people an idea of, what the scale of some of these things would look like on those lots. But again, I wouldn't leave them up for 30 minutes and talk about where the buildings are going to be, because it's going to change anyway. But
Right.
we've done a lot of work. We hired somebody, and this is a visual.
Okay. All right, so we all agree on that. Okay. That is the stuff I had on my agenda. So I think we need to have 2 more meetings as a subcommittee. One, I'll try and schedule one, I guess maybe what we should do is throw out some dates when we could meet, and I'll see when I can schedule the town staff. I'll give them those dates and say, here's some options when all of you can come together. And then we can also have one just to talk through the sort of pros and cons.
So it would need to be between now and like the week of 4/20. We would need to schedule 2 in that time frame.
What was it?
Yes, I mean, I think we're probably gonna need more than that, because we also need to plan the meeting and the presentation and the survey. I mean, there's a lot of other work, so I would say.
So why don't we schedule one subcommittee meeting a week between now and
yeah. Is there a day of the week that's generally better? I know a lot of you have I mean, myself included, a lot of meetings coming up in the next month. Is there a day, like Thursday?
Which week are you looking at?
Every week, Bill. Is there any day you don't have meetings every week?
I have Tuesday and Thursday every week between
Okay.
March 12th and 4/14.
What days are the Charter Review Commission, Bill?
Charter review is on Tuesdays, and we generally start at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So it's every other Tuesday, 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock, and it's every other Tuesday. I think I've got that right.
Only one day a week. Okay. I thought it was more than one.
Well, they have some things too.
That's not my department.
So sounds like maybe Wednesday nights could work.
Which Wednesday?
Yeah.
They have housing authority,
Okay.
but other Wednesdays I'm okay, third one.
So how's February 25th look for people?
I have a time
Right.
meeting.
Wednesday, February 25th.
Hillary's a no. Is anyone else?
I'm not here.
Okay.
I'm here.
All right.
I'm not here for the week of the 15th.
Me either. Okay, how about March 4th?
I could do March 4th.
I can do March 4th.
Okay.
I can too.
I have a volunteer recognition over setting.
All right. Well, that's most people. Before sounds pretty good. 3/11.
Yeah, I'm free.
I will be out
Yep.
of I can zoom in.
Okay.
How we do it?
And yeah, some of the, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not saying we have to meet in person, actually, we could do a lot of these on Zoom, I'm not sure we need to meet in person every single time. All right, and then what about the 18th and the 25th of March, just,
I have a town council meeting on Tuesday,
okay, so 18th is a no,
but I can do the 25th.
25th works.
25 is good.
25th works.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will follow up from tonight and email those town staff and see if they could come either March 4th, 11th, or 25th to talk to us, and then we can schedule one of those other dates when they're not coming to talk about the pros and cons. And then as we get closer to April, I think we need to maybe break into two groups, one that's focused on getting the meeting organized, finding, you know, the space, figuring out the agenda, who needs to be there, how we're gonna do this, and then another group that's working on the survey, what the questions look like. Getting it up on SurveyMonkey as a draft for us to take a look at. But I think we're a little ways away from that right now. Jane, did you, oh wait, two more, sorry, I have so many little sticky notes, guys. Jane, did you want to talk about parking data and information that you wanted to try and gather?
The only reason I wanted to bring this up, I think we can be very quick, is that, as you all may know, Stacy Miltenberg is leaving at the end of February. She's the person who knows
Yeah.
what there is to know about parking. So Tucker Murphy's offered to help us if we have specific questions that they could get answers for us. But we need to know what those are. So you want to take a couple minutes and just shout out things you'd like to know. For example, I'd like to be able to tell people at the meeting if they say, hey, what about Morse Court? Jeff Speck brought that up. I'd love to know parking usage in Morse Court, for example. And maybe we want to ask about underground parking at Walgreens. I don't know. But are there parking questions that would be important to raise before she leaves?
I think the big question someone mentioned before was, while construction is going on,
Mhm.
what do we do?
And I would, if we can get, like numbers on usage, so like for lumberyard, for each of the 3 lots, how many of them are commuter passes? How many are town employee passes? Like, is Richmond Hill undersubscribed? Is Locust, is there a waiting list? Like that kind of data, I think is important.
Yeah,
How many private owners have parking passes there?
Okay.
that they need to employees, you know. She's really good on all that stuff.
Yeah.
She's had it all on the top of her head.
Yeah. I
Great.
think-
And do we want to see changes over time if she has them? I think maybe we do.
Yeah, just try this out.
Yeah, if she has trends, I think that would be great. I think somebody brought up to me today that the lumberyard, like that train usage might be up, so I'm curious, like. Is there a wait list anymore? Did it go down, the parking demand, and do we see it rising again? Cause I think that's important, particularly when we talk about needing to find alternate parking during any construction that might be going on.
Could we use some of the church parking lots, up on Owen Oak and provide bus service? I mean, I assume there's going to be enormous disruption. I could be wrong on that, but
Great. Okay. Thank you.
The last sticky note I think that I had is I think that Locust Scheme 2, which is the one that shows exiting or potential ingress egress on Forest Street. I have some concerns about showing that, because the town doesn't own that piece of land, and I think it's kind of bad form to go out to the public and show a driveway across someone's house. And I also think it's not, again, back to the apples to apples comparison. If we don't have land ownership, I'm not sure, I feel like, I mean, we own Lumberyard, we own Locust, to show a scenario with a piece of land that we don't own feels like we're throwing another big unknown
Up to
into.
force.
Out to force.
Up to force.
Yeah, just that part, obviously.
You should not show that.
Yeah, I think we should, so I was gonna go back to Emma and say, I think that Scheme 2 for Locust needs to be redrawn to not show that. And then they need to tell us. I assume it can still work with access to Heritage Hill and access to
Yes.
Main Street, but if for some reason it can't work, then we need to know that,
Locust.
oh yeah, sorry, Locust and Heritage
So
Hill.
the other thing, on the scheme where they propose we build a huge parking garage against the railroad tracks.
Mhm.
They said that we're only using Elm Street. They're not, in their text, they say they're not, that they're, the primary exit and the access and egress was to Elm Street. And they're not talking about Grove Street, but then in the drawings, they show Grove Street.
Yeah,
It's just inconsistent.
I'll ask them about that too.
And they definitely should be using the.
They should be using
Yeah.
Grove Street.
Like that's where we do have land ownership.
Oh, that's one of the reasons we.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like the point, but I hear your point and I agree with you on the Locust scheme too, that I think there's a big assumption there, A, that we would buy that property, and B, that it's for sale.
Right.
And I don't wanna make those assumptions, particularly for people who live there. I just think that's not fair, and
It's presumptive.
it's, yeah.
And I think,
But you do know that the reason it's shown is because Tiger had conversations with the estate that owns it about buying it way back.
I think that's a conversation.
I
that
agree
if
with you, we shouldn't bring it up.
I don't think-
but
yeah.
There is that.
yeah, it's not out of left field, but
Yes, and that is if we went with Locust, understanding that all of these schemes are subject to major revisions, based on input and town and demand and blah, blah, blah. That is a responsibility, that would be like a first selectman's office job to figure out if in entrance and exit there would work. It's not for us to assume that it.
and so what I would say to Menta Emma is like, we need to know that scheme 2 still works without that, take it off, does it work without that? And then if it does happen in the future, then it only enhances potentially a project, but it's
Yeah,
not gonna detract.
The Grove Street lot, I don't know how wide it is, but I think it's pretty narrow. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a little wet, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get clarity.
I was just thinking you could take it off. I mean, in terms of putting the visuals up, I mean, it's just going to be up for, we're not going to discuss it. I don't think it's just going to be up. We considered this, and here's where we are with the lumberyard, right? Something like that.
Yeah, but I do think we need to take it off, so.
I think we should take it off, but I'm just saying, I don't think we need to fill it in with something else, recalculate the numbers, just take it off. And
No, I mean, unless they're like, this absolutely does not work without that, then I'm gonna say.
yeah,
well,
yeah, but we have to, but we know that would be in the cost numbers, right?
Okay, I think that's fair. All right. That's everything I have, guys. Sorry for the
Good
rambling,
No, it's great.
long journey we took. I don't think anybody, let's see if there's any public, I think it's just us.
I make a motion that Bill adjourns because he's been on Zoom call for
Yeah,
7 hours today.
All right, so we're clear. So guys, just pencil in on your calendars, March 4th, 11th and 25th at 7 p.m. Like I said, probable we could just do that all on Zoom.
Yep.
And we'll sort out exactly what we're doing at each of those later, but let's just kind of hold space for us to come back together.
Yeah.
And it sounds like I have a motion from Mr. Perrette to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right.
All right,
Well done.
Hi.
Ready?
thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Krista.
Yep.
Thanks for session. Great work, JR.